The fire we reported at the old fire hall is still burning out of...
Do you sometimes feel confused or lost in the complications and complexities of life? Do you feel drained, listless, or exhausted from the daily burdens and responsibilities? Why not seek our campus ministers on air every Tuesday from 2 to 3 in the afternoon? Listen to our counselors from the Loyola School's Campus Ministry Office as they ground our lives in our faith, in our school's spiritual tradition. Campus Ministers on Air. Be guided, be inspired, be blessed. Listen to our Campus Ministers on Air.
Good afternoon, friends. Ang lakas. Good afternoon. This is your Campus Minister on Air. I am Marky. I'm the Campus Minister for sophomores of the Loyola schools. And good afternoon. So, good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon. Today is we celebrate the feast of Saint Teresa of Avila. And we're going to talk more about her in this particular episode. So since, as with all campus ministry activities, we begin with a prayer. But most importantly, I invite all of you to spend a few moments of silence before we begin our prayer. Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Huwag mabalisa. Huwag mabahala. Lahat naglalaho. Diyos di nawawala. Nakukuha sa tiyaga. Lahat nakakamtan. Ang may hawak sa Diyos, siyang di kinukulang. Ito'y sapat na. Diyos lamang. Glory to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as in the beginning, is now, and will be forever. Amen. Saint Teresa of Avila.
Pray for us.
Saint Ignatius of Loyola.
Pray for us.
In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen. So, I am honored to have our guest today. So, short intro. Sorry, short intro. So, our guest graduated with a AV Philosophy degree in Ateneo, and he studied also in Provence in France, and since then has served the Ateneo de Manila University, the Loyola schools, in many capacities as Assistant Professor of Philosophy, as Chair of the Department of Philosophy, the Department of English, the Pre-Divinity Program, and from 2007 to 2014, the Associate Dean for Academic Affairs. He is still teaching philosophy and well loved by many generations of Ateneans and Jesuits and many religious people. And so please join me in welcoming my professor, Sir Ediboy Calasanz. So, sir, hello. Good afternoon. Ulit. So, kinakabahan ako. Kumusta ka?
Ang oral exam.
Kumusta? Parang hindi naman. Mas malala yung oral exam, sir. Mas malala. So, kumusta kayo, sir? How's your day been?
Okay. Quiet as usual. I had class this morning. I worked in the library for a while. So, a normal day.
Normal day. Okay, sige. So, game. So let's start. So ang request daw ay tungkol kay Santa Teresa. So a briefer, who is Saint Teresa of Avila? She is a Carmelite nun, a Spanish mystic, a religious reformer, an author, a theologian of the contemplative life and of mental prayer, and was once a candidate for the national patron, to be a national patron saint of Spain. And 4 years after her death, was canonized by Pope Gregory in 1626, and in 1970 was declared a doctor of the church by Pope Paul VI, the first female doctor of the church, Saint Teresa of Avila. So siguro sir, so I think there's so many things to talk about. Pero if you are given the opportunity to just tell siguro like Catholics or students or whoever, parang what's the one thing that you would like young people or Catholics of every shade and color to know about Saint Teresa? Parang what would you talk to them about?
I think what I'd like to stress is that Saint Teresa was a woman of passion. A woman of great passion, of great desires, and it was because of this that she became a great writer, one of the jewels of Spanish literature, both in prose and in poetry. She was a great reformer in the history of the Catholic Church. She was one of the leading lights of the Counter-Reformation. And it's not an accident, I think, that she was canonized alongside with St. Ignatius and St. Francis of St. Ignatius and St. Francis Xavier, no? March 12, the year that you mentioned, by Pope Gregory. But above all, I think because she was a woman of great passion, she was able to serve the church. Her passions were multiple, but the great passion of her life has always been God Himself. No? She was passionate about God. She was a woman of great desire. She wanted everything, no? Todo. And this everything which you could find only in God. And it was this, I think, that she tried to share, not only in founding the Reformed Carmel, first of all, the convent of the community of nuns in San Jose de Avila in 1562, and then later on reforming the friars, the masculine group of the Order of Carmel. It was this that she tried to share with her numerous friends, because she was a woman of passion. She had many friends, not just among religious, but among high society, among the simple people, among the members of the royal court of Spain. I mean, she had friends and contacts everywhere, and this was what she tried to share, that we be men and women of great desires, no? And I think it's a challenge, especially for the youth nowadays. It's a question I often pose to my students, no? What is it that you really want? What is your great passion? What is your great desire? Do you have a great desire? Do you have a dream? Because with that great passion, you could do many things. But without that great passion, it will be more difficult.
Sir, I think, paano yun hinahanap? I mean, I think you know this. Many of your students would want to know this passion. Sabihin siguro nila sa inyo, sir, parang it's not, sir, kahit hindi great passion, just kahit passion lang. Parang how how do we find this passion in our lives, especially for the youth?
Okay, that's a very good question, and it's a very pertinent question. How do you find one's passion? There are many roads, no? But I will just focus on one road, and I'd like to take as my starting point this gospel scene. It's one of my favorite gospel scenes to which I often return to. It's in the second chapter, if I'm not mistaken, of the fourth gospel. And it records the very first words that Jesus utters in the fourth gospel. You're familiar with the scene. John the Baptist is baptizing his disciples around him. Jesus passes by, and John points out Jesus to his disciples and says, "Behold the Lamb of God." And then two of his disciples follow Jesus. So susunod-sunod. And then Jesus turns around and utters his very first words in the fourth gospel. Anong hinahanap ninyo? What are you looking for? Okay? And they're so confused by that simple question that they just manage, "Saan po kayo nakatira? Where do you live?" And then he tells them, "Come and see." And they stayed with him that whole afternoon, okay, until around 4 o'clock. And what's very intriguing about these first words of Jesus in the fourth gospel, what are you looking for? What is it that you want? These are also the very first words he utters to Mary Magdalene after the resurrection and Easter morning. You know, Mary Magdalene is crying. She's at the tomb. She's weeping. They have taken her master, her friend away, and so this man whom she mistakes for the gardener asks her, "What are you looking for? Sino yung hinahanap ninyo?" And I think that's the question that Jesus asks each one of us, no? What are you looking for? In other words, you ask the question, how do I find this passion? Well, look within yourselves. It's not a question of finding a passion like finding a lost thing or finding something that you never had. You already have this passion. It's deep within you. Okay, it's forgive my vocabulary. I'm a philosophy teacher, no, so I tend to use philosophical terms. But it's really ingrained in your very being, no. Okay, it's part of your the structure of who you really are. You are already looking for something, someone. Okay. And it's a question of paying attention, being alive to, being aware of, being animated by this desire that you already have. Okay. And that's what passion is all about.
Was it easy for example, Santa Teresa to parang make this desire or passion unfold parang in her life, or was it, or parang does she also have some sort of struggle in the same way that we do?
Oh yes, in fact, she struggled with it for a long time. So she was a very passionate woman. No, she was brought up in a family which was very very loving. I mean, she was surrounded by a lot of love. also by a lot of frivolity. Her mother loved reading romances, and she took up her mother's interests in that sense. She was a party goer. She had what young people would now call relationships. So she had a lot of relationships. In fact, at one point, one relationship was getting to be too close, and her father was worried, and so they sent her off to a boarding school because they were afraid that something might happen. So they cut off the relationship by sending her to a very strict boarding school. So she was a very normal girl. She loved to party. She loved to dress up. She was what I would call a kulakikay, no? I mean, she was malande and that sort of thing. Okay, and yeah, of course, she was a good girl. It was a Catholic family, so she went to mass regularly. She said her prayers, but God was there together with her other interests. I mean, God was one little passion in the midst of all other passions. And it was until and she was like that, and but God has His ways, and so little by little made her discover a vocation. A vocation to the religious life, a vocation to Carmel. But even there, I mean, it wasn't a very. I mean, it wasn't like the experience of I don't know of the cannonball experience of Ignatius together with his years of convalescence and little by little discovering God's involvement in his life. No, Teresa entered Carmel because one of her good friends entered that convent. I mean, it was as shallow as talaga mababaw, no?
Na peer pressure siya into entering.
Well, it wasn't really peer pressure. It was friendship.
Okay.
It was friendship, no? Kasi doon pumasok yung kaibigan niya. So sabi niya, doon na rin ako papasok.
Yeah.
Okay? And for years, I mean, she lived an ordinary religious life. I mean, she followed the rules. She was a good girl. She was a good nun. But yun lang, without really taking to heart her vocation, without taking to heart God's involvement in her life. I mean, she went through the daily schedule. She did the daily rituals, the liturgy, etc., etc. She was nice. She was a nice woman, and even within the convent, she was an entertainer. So a good person. Pero yun lang. Kumbaga, as she herself would admit later on, she was a very mediocre person. Okay, there's nothing wrong. I mean, you won't go to hell because of mediocrity, I think, no? Pero sayang. Until one day, God calls her. Okay, so the initiative came from God. Okay, the initiative came from God. Something was already there in Teresa, but the initiative really came from. And how did this initiative take place? One of the things that Teresa was really attached to, no, Ignatius would talk about inordinate attachments, was her friends. No, she social siya, no. Okay, marami siyang kaibigan. She madaldal. She liked to tell stories. She liked to spend time, to waste time with her friends, no, both inside the clausura and in the parlor with the other people in the world. So she sensed that this is not quite right, no. This is not quite right. Hindi sa kasalanan ba, no? Hindi naman sa ganun. Kaya lang parang hindi tama, no? Parang lihis, parang it was something that wasn't quite what God was asking her. Okay, until one day, because she just couldn't, you know, on her own effort, her own goodwill, wala, too slack. She was just too attached to these things. Till one day, she came upon a statue of an Ecce Homo, the bleeding Christ, the Christ after the scourging at the pillar. Okay. And seeing how much, and what really struck her was not so much how Christ suffered for her, not so much that wasn't although that was what was depicted, no? But rather how much Christ loved her. It was the discovery of Christ's love for her that awakened in her that awareness that she wanted to love Christ back. Okay? So nauna yung divine initiative, no? And I think that's always been the case in her life, and it's a running thread in all her writings. Yes, we are called to respond to God's love. We are called to a life of service. We are called to follow Christ. We are called to that sequela Christi. But all of this is response. It comes in the second place. The first move has always been Christ's. The first move is God's. He's the one who calls. He's the one who loves first. He's the one who whispers to us, okay, when you were still in your womb, I have already loved you, as he told the prophet Isaiah and the prophet Jeremiah. No? Okay. And I think it is this that gives to Teresa's writings a certain air of a certain air of impatience, no, a certain intensity. Matindi siya, no, matindi siya. Okay, precisely because when you have realized how much you are loved, paano ka hindi magiging matindi?
Well, matindi na siya, like, I mean, by herself, diba? I mean, even before the realization that she was loved by God.
What do you mean?
I mean, parang she's already, sabi mo, parang she's already this really passionate person even before parang that call of God, diba?
Yes.
So, yeah.
She was already this very passionate person, but all of that passion, that katindihan, it was sort of directed towards her friends.
Parang kalat siya.
Kalat.
Yeah.
Kalat. Okay? Para bagang it was only this love for God that she really discovers, no? She uncovers. So it was a moment of aletheia, a moment of truth. No? That she realizes, no, finally, ito yung magbibigay ng kabuuan. Okay? Parang dito lamang nabuo yung kanyang loob. Kasi otherwise, hating-hati siya, no? She lived a divided life like most of us.
Like many of us, yeah.
Okay? Like most of us, we live divided lives. No, we try to be good. We try to, I think some of us even try, yes, awkwardly, but we try to be holy. But we're divided. Hati, we haven't really taken ourselves in our hands and say, here I am, Lord.
Yeah.
Okay, we haven't really taken yung kabuuan ng ating sarili and say, take, Lord, and receive my liberty. Okay? So even Teresa had to go through that. I mean, she wasn't a saint in a jiffy, no? I mean, she struggled, okay? And she even and that was the first, because we can speak of the many conversions of Teresa, no? That was her big conversion. It's like first love, talagang matindi, talagang may drama. You can hear the violins in the background, okay? But then there was another important conversion in her life, because we won't go into all the details, no? But a certain point in her life, in her religious life, she fell back. Okay, so we can identify with that. Nag backslide. Okay, yeah, she still was faithful to her vows. She was faithful to the sacraments and that sort of thing. She had the sacramental life, but okay, once more, the pull of mediocrity, the pull of yung pagkakalat, no? And once more, like in the old days, her friends. No? I mean, friendship is very beautiful and it's a good thing. It's a good thing. Kaya lang, it can lose its way.
Yeah.
It can deviate. Parang lumilihis sa landas. Okay? And that's what happened. No? She had many friends, and so like in her former life, God became one friend together with other friends. Ayan.
Ang galing nun.
Okay?
Yeah.
And luckily, by that time she was she had the Jesuit confessor.
It's Borgia.
No. Borgia is later on.
Okay.
Borgia is later on. But she had she had many. She had around certainly more than a dozen, maybe around 15 confessors. Most of her, a lot of her consultants were Dominicans, no? And then she had also some Franciscan consultants. She would consult, for her growth in her prayer life. But most of her confessors were Jesuits. No? And in fact, more and more, there is documentary evidence that Teresa, at a certain point, this is much later, of course, no? But at a certain point, made the exercises, no? Received the exercises when she was staying in the house of a good friend of her, with permission, of course, from superiors. But she spent 2 or 3 years in the house of a friend of hers. And it was during this time that recent findings, documentary evidence, have shown that she was given the exercises according to the was it the 15th or the 19th annotation, yung retreat in daily life, no?
Okay.
So I mean, she didn't spend 30 days, the 30 days, but the equivalent of 30 days, but in daily life. So she had that experience. So anyway, she was guided by the Jesuits, okay, and of course they couldn't understand her. Because at this time already she had some extraordinary prayer experiences, very intense experiences, what we would now call ecstasies and things like that. And at the same time, these very ascetical, in a way, confessors saw that her life was mediocre. Her virtues were not outstanding at all, no? So parang there was a disconnect. Okay, there was a certain gap between the extraordinary favors she was receiving and her mediocre spiritual life, no? Because the extraordinary favors are not. I mean, they're favors, they're helps, but they don't constitute the reality of our relationship with God, no? So as far as that, the reality of a relationship with God, it was mediocre. It was lukewarm. Yan. Hindi sa wala, no? Pero it was lukewarm. It was mababaw, no? Matindi yung mga prayer experiences, pero mababaw yung relationship. Kasi pwede yun, no? Kahit na sa romantic relationship, maaring matindi yung nararamdaman, pero mababaw yung kaugnayan. Right. So ganon, no? And so her confessors worked on her on that. Okay, and then there was this added complication. I won't develop it so much because it will oblige us to go into a bit of history of the church at that time. But there were many who were saying that if you're not a good person, if you're a mediocre, then you shouldn't really be praying.
Kasi you're not worth.
You're not worth.
Yeah.
Yes. You're not worthy.
Yeah.
Okay? You're not worthy to receive God's favors. Kasi, parang hipokrito ka lang, pray ka ng pray, pero mababaw naman yung mo, that sort of thing, no? And for a while, she believed them. Okay? She felt herself, because she was kulakikay, she was passionate, but she was also a very honest woman. Okay, she was a very truthful person. Okay, and she saw that she was mediocre, and so she believed this. Those who were saying that you're not worthy of prayer, and so she abandoned personal prayer. Okay,
wow.
She was still going to mass. She was participating in the liturgy. She had a sacramental life. She was she was a Carmelite nun, no? So she was celebrating the liturgy of the hours every day. That sort of thing. That was not a problem. Okay? She did what was required of her. Yeah. Okay, what was required of her? She obeyed all the rules. Okay, even the rules of Carmel concerning prayer life, but she abandoned deliberately personal prayer. Okay, in other words, that cultivation of that personal relationship, of that friendship with the Lord. Okay, and it almost 20 years.
Oh my God.
20 years of mediocrity. 20 years of abandoning personal prayer. Okay, of not being a bad person. Once more, not being a bad person, but parang kung estudyante ka, C, pasado, okay. With a C, you can graduate from the Ateneo. Pero C lang.
Yeah.
When you could do more. Okay? And once more, okay? It was the Lord that sort of drew her out of that mediocrity. And she would never remember this without a feeling of sorrow, of shame, because parang, and once more, not because she was bad, but because sayang. That experience, and I think we don't speak of it often enough. Saint Ignatius in the exercises speaks of vergüenza. No? Shame and sorrow, no? At our sins, or even more so in our concerning our sinfulness, no? And I think this vergüenza, hindi yung nahihiya ka, no? It's not so much that, but that feeling of sayang, no? Sayang, okay? And I think in the face of mediocrity, I think we should have that vergüenza, okay? That sayang, that shame and sorrow, because we were not quite up to the challenge, the invitation of the Lord.
Balik ko, so...
ikaw nagtanong tungkol sa struggle. But
hindi.
mahaba yung struggle niya, kaya mahaba din yung kwento ko. No?
Hindi, yung na-pick up ko na isa kanina is that when you said na she wasn't a saint, or she didn't find her passion in a jiffy. And I think gusto ko lang like to spend a moment to just say na I think that's a good point for all of us, even us na we're not in college anymore, na parang these passions take time, as you said in one of your talks, na these things, or like finding your passions, or like these big parang initiatives of life, kailangan nila ng oras at time is all we have. I think you said once, so
yeah. And I think that's the call. Time is all we have, and time is all that we are called to give.
Wait lang, bago yun. Time is all we have.
And time is all that we are called to give. We are called to give our time.
Yeah.
In other words, to give ourselves.
Yeah. Attention din, as what you said a while ago.
And all of that really is what prayer is all about. Okay? Saint Teresa in her life, her autobiography gives a beautiful, very simple definition of prayer. It's a conversation, a friendly exchange. She says, tratar de amistad. It's a friendly exchange, a conversation with the one whom we know loves us. Okay. It's a friendly exchange with the one whom we know loves us, has always loved us. So that love is prior. So this exchange is based on this prior love, no? Because he has loved me. Okay, why talk to him? Because he has loved me first. Okay, and it's just that it's not saying a set of words or formulas. It's not doing a particular set of rituals. No, it's just this friendly exchange. No, so in joy, in pain, in sorrow, in pleasure. Regardless of what I'm feeling, regardless of what I'm going through, regardless of my past, even of my sinful past, it is to engage in this tratar de amistad, this exchange of friendship, okay, with the one whom I know loves me and has always loved me. Okay, and so what's the at the heart of this exchange? Attention. Okay, attention, to be attentive, to be alisto, to be to experience that when Mary of Bethany was waiting, and then after the death of Lazarus, and then Martha went over to fetch Jesus, and then Martha goes to Mary and tells her sister, "Come, the Master is here." Okay. And so, what is attention? It is to hear that whisper, "Come, the Master is here." To be attentive to that presence. To sit like Mary of Bethany at the foot of the Lord. To be attentive to His presence. It's even not so much to listen to His words, although that's part of it. No? Yeah. That's part of it. But even more important than that, to be attentive to His presence. The Master is here. And to be attentive to His presence, regardless of my feelings. Sometimes I'm enthusiastic. Sometimes I'm on a high, a spiritual high. Sometimes I'm consoled. Sometimes I feel I'm loving and I'm being loved. Okay, fine. Okay, be thankful. Let's be thankful for that. But also sometimes I don't feel anything. Sometimes I feel abandoned. Sometimes I feel that nothing is happening. And sometimes the only thing I remember is not that I am loved, but that I have sinned. Okay? And in that quiet, that stillness, the first thing that rises on the surface of my consciousness is not God and His presence. It's my sins. It's my temptations. It's my attachments. It's the things that I feel ashamed about. It's the ugly things in me. The things that I shouldn't be feeling, but I'm feeling. The things that I shouldn't be thinking about, but I'm thinking about them. Okay? And yet, in all that, Teresa says, it's okay. It's okay. Okay? In all that, just be attentive to His presence. Just stay in His presence. And that's the heart of what, it doesn't sound right, no? But anyway, that's the traditional vocabulary. That's what mental prayer is all about. Okay? That's what silent prayer is all about, no? That's what personal prayer is all about. Just to be attentive to the presence of the Lord.
Yeah, yung sinabi rin sa amin yan recently that sometimes the best prayer daw is to behold God beholding you parang lovingly. Parang
yeah, and that comes from Teresa. Huh?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
She one way of praying says, "Mira que te mira." Okay, look, mira le que te mira. Look at Him looking at you.
Yeah.
Look at Him looking at you. Okay? And she insists, prayer is not about thinking much or even imagining much. Prayer is not about feeling much. prayer is about loving much.
Loving.
Okay. And if it's about loving much, then like love, it's a question of decision, of awareness, of attentiveness, of being present to.
I think si Vale naman yung nagsabi that ano yun, parang prayer ba yun is the highest form of attention.
Oh, of attention, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And as I parang leave all of these philo classes after all these years, I think mas bumabalik sa when parang things become ano yun? The simplest things become the most difficult to do.
Oh yes.
Like itong just beholding God, beholding you. As you said, parang there are many times na prayer is just ano tawag dun, you're just makasalanan ka. So parang nagtatago ka dun sa nagmamahal na tingin sa'yo ng Diyos, and sometimes it doesn't feel good at all.
Oh yes.
And yet parang you should still go and do it.
You know, there's an expression we have in Tagalog, no? Wala akong mukhang
Ipapakita pala.
ipapakita.
Yeah.
Wala akong mukhang ihaharap sa Kanya. Okay? And first of all, it's normal.
Yeah.
That's normal. And secondly, it's good. It's good that we feel that way. Okay? It's good that we are placed in the truth. The truth of our human condition, the truth of our sinful condition, because we are sinners. Okay? Wala akong mukhang ihaharap sa Kanya, ipapakita sa Kanya. But the good news, and this is really good news, is that He tells me, wala kang mukhang ipapakita sa akin, but it's okay. May mukha akong ipapakita sa iyo. Okay? Yun lang ang pansinin mo. Ipako mo ang iyong pansin dun sa mukha ko na pinapakita ko sa iyo. And this face that the Lord shows us, that He presents to us, is a wounded face. Okay? The Lord presents to us Himself in His body the way He presented Himself to His disciples in His body after the resurrection. In other words, in His wounds. Okay? He shows to us His wounded hands and feet, His wounded side. Okay? And we are invited, just as He invited Thomas, no? We are invited to touch those wounds. You know? Pope Francis has reminded us so often these past years, no, to pay attention to the wounds of Christ, not to be afraid to touch the wounds of Christ, okay, to touch the wounds of His body. Okay, what does that mean? And Pope Francis tells us today it means to touch the wounds of Christ in His body, the church. Okay. Not just the institutional church, you know, with all the scandals that have rocked the church these past years, but to touch the wounds of the living body of Christ, which is the poor, the needy, the homeless. Okay, not to afraid to touch them, to hug them, to kiss them, to be present to them, because in being present to them, we are present to the Lord. You know, Saint Teresa has this in the interior castle. I think it's in the part when she talks about the fifth mansions. No, so a period of stable union with Christ. She says, you know, when you're the real test of our love for God, and she's not saying anything new here. She's repeating, so to speak, the first letter of John. Yeah? The test of our love for God is our love for our neighbor. Okay, we can never be quite fully sure about whether we love God or not, but we can have a better sense of our love for neighbor. Okay, and the two are one, no? Okay, and she says that you know, when you fast, okay, you know, just don't fast so that you can give what you are not eating
to others,
yeah, to the needy, those who need them. Okay. So even you know, an ascetical practice like fasting has an apostolic dimension. It's not just for me when I fast. I mean, that's the difference between dieting and fasting. Okay? Yung dieting, papapayat ako, no? Oh,
Yeah.
okay, di ako kakain, okay. But fasting, it's more than that. Okay? It's for the Lord and for His body, the church. Okay? So, it necessarily has a sharing component.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just like dieting.
Yeah. I think parang yung dieting, in that example, dieting is more inward. Parang yung direction niya is very inward.
Sarili.
Yeah.
Oo,
And then
sarili.
fasting is outward.
Yeah.
Pala. Parang ganun pala. I mean, yeah. And we don't have much time left.
Oh,
So,
ang bilis talaga, no?
how much time left? Pero I hope you can talk a little bit about your community. Or no?
Well, it's my secret life, but anyway, so I belong to a secular institute, a Carmelite secular institute, Notre Dame de Vie. It's a worldwide organization, and we are a secular institute of pontifical right. But in the Philippines, there are 3 autonomous branches in Notre Dame de Vie. The ladies in the Philippines, they're more well known, they're more numerous, and then we also have a sacerdotal branch composed mostly of diocesan priests. There are around a dozen of them in the Philippines, and then we have a small group of laymen, of consecrated laymen here in the Philippines. So we're, at least for the 2 lay branches, we're lay people. So we work in the world. We live in the world. We don't have any distinguishing mark or a habit or something like that. We don't put NDV after our names. Anyway, but we are consecrated. What does that mean? Like religious, we profess the evangelical counsels of poverty, chastity, and obedience. We live these vows. Okay, so we are committed entirely to God and to the church. Okay, through these vows, we are at the disposal of the church, but precisely in a secular way. So in the world, we pay taxes and we exercise secular professions. Although in the Philippines, most of us are in the field of education, but in principle, we can go anywhere. We live a life which is really a legacy of Saint Teresa, because we live according to the spirituality of Carmel. Okay, so it's a life also of contemplative prayer, with a very strong access on silence and solitude. Okay, but together with that, okay, engage in the world. No, it's a synthesis which we try to live out, perhaps most of the time awkwardly, imperfectly, but that's our vocation, not to live as our founder, the blessed Father Mariusian of the Child Jesus said, contemplation and action well united. This unity of contemplative prayer and apostolic mission, above all and first of all, is a gift. Okay, it's a grace. It's God who realizes that, who accomplishes that in us. But on our part, on the part of the human instrument, okay, our task is a work of collaboration, of cooperation. Saint Ignatius in the Constitutions of the Society of Jesus has this beautiful phrase which Father Roque once pointed out to me, that the first duty of the instrument, okay, is to make sure that it remains in the hands of the one using it.
Okay.
Okay? And that's what makes for the strength, the effectiveness of the instrument, that it is in the hands of the one using it.
Okay.
Okay? So also, I think for us, no, in the vision of Saint Teresa, our apostolic effectiveness, no, it's in a certain way regulated, first of all, and always by the grace of God, okay, but also by our remaining in the hands of the Lord, no? Remaining in the hands of the Lord, meaning to say remaining in His presence, this contemplative attentiveness, no? That's why we spend a lot of time in prayer during the day and during the year. Those moments are very important for us. It's as necessary for us as air for human life. Okay, but at the same time, and this is our witnessing to show that spending a lot of time in prayer does not at all minimize or does not at all subtract from our effectiveness in engaging in the world, engaging in a secular profession, in being with others, in the service of others. And it's, of course, it's a struggle, okay? But above all, it's a grace, and this is what Saint Teresa has shared with us.
Okay, so to our viewers, if you find that interesting enough, or you are moved by that, so kontakin nyo na lang kami. We'll connect you with Sir Ediboy. Okay, let's see if people have questions. Hello, Sir Calasanz, from your former student, Father Regine Tenorio? Josefino daw. Yun lang.
Hi, Reggie.
Okay. Sige, last question that we ask all our guests. Where did you find God this week?
Oh, mahabang kwento yan.
Ikli-iklihan mo na lang.
Iiklihan ko lang.
Oh, sige.
Sige. Spontaneously, I just mentioned 3.
Sige, sir. Sige.
Okay, 3. Kailan ba yun? Last Saturday. Okay? I live with 2 others. No, we're 3 in the household in Varsity Hills, and one of us during the afternoon said that masama raw yung tiyan niya.
Okay.
So sabi ko, sige kung masama ang tiyan, let's just have lugaw. Okay, so lugaw. And so another one was the one who prepared dinner. So we had lugaw, but he also had this good idea of having yung asado, yung char siu, yung pork na medyo matamis-tamis,
okay.
Asado, and we had choice chicken, and we had duck.
Oh my God.
Na in-order niya sa famous dyan sa Esteban Abada. So and it was just so good. I mean, it was just a simple lugaw, and then a bit of duck and a bit of soy chicken and a bit of char siu. And yes, I mean, it's one of those moments when you can say, praise the Lord, ang sarap ng kinakain ko. Okay, that's one.
Jouissance.
Jouissance, yes. The other one, I had a conversation last Friday with a student of mine. And it was a simple conversation, but one of those moments when you connect.
Yeah.
You connect with another person. Yung nagkakaintindihan kayo. And it was something simple, something banal, but after that conversation, I felt, my existence as a teacher is justified. If only for those moments na nakakonect kami, and it's one of those moments where I feel it's not because of what I did or what I said, but there was something more. Okay, there were 3 of us in that conversation, and it was a moment of grace. No? So God was there. Parang dumaan siya, no? Parang naramdaman ko yung kanyang bakas, no? And the third was one was just yesterday at prayer, and it's simple. That's why it's difficult to talk about it. It's always difficult to talk about the simple things, but when I experienced some sort of what St. Ignatius calls consolation. No? In other words, yung the Lord whispering to you na, okay, ganyan ka, but it's okay. Mahal pa rin kita. And, simple lang, no? Pero I never get tired of hearing that. When the Lord tells me, na naman, pero it's okay. Okay? Mahal kita. Okay? That for me is consolation. And that for me is God's presence.
Salamat, Sir Ediboy. May we follow in the passion and in the passion of Santa Teresa and your passion din. And be always in discernment. So, yes, so I hope kayo din, I think even very simply and very shortly, that you stop and ask yourselves, where are you able to find God today, or in the last week, or in the past significant time periods of your lives? Kasi lagi lang siyang nandyan. So, maraming salamat, Sir Ediboy. Thank you to our viewers. And this has been Campus Ministers on Air. I am Marky, and we are signing out.
Sisters and